Being arrested, his mother. You gotta be kidding me. Why? Wait. Wait, where your head? As a person, does this make sense to you? As a person, not as a police officer, as a person, does this make sense to you? His mother is being arrested.
Ready to actually discuss the COVID limited liability discussion. We actually saw Idaho State Police put a man in handcuffs.
And I am here to tell you that the media got it 1,000% wrong. They were going to keep us out at all costs. That is our house. In the media, it was reported that we broke it. We meaning Ammon's group. We meaning rioters. We meaning protesters.
For those of you, you've seen or probably heard Brian's other work. We actually played a lot of it this morning when the door was breaking. And probably the best footage that we could have found on that. Thank you for that, by the way. Appreciate it. That showed that it was an accident and not an aggressive act.
As to why some media get to stand, but others don't. Pardon me?
They have personal credentials. Yes, but they're allowed to let speakers.
So that's what you're saying is other journalists don't get the same rights?
As the press. Right in your ears, I guess.
So we're not being recognized as journalists for the people. We're being told that we have to move in our own Capitol building. We cannot be given a vantage point to record the accuracy of these events. So this is a building owned by the people. It cannot only be given to members of the press. We are all media members of the press that represent the people. Can you explain to us why there would be a difference between entities and processes in place that would not allow the same rights to all journalists when we own this house? Why would you not answer the question?
Because he's a narcissist.
And I'm sorry, that table is reserved for a credentialed president, and I'm asking to move, please.
Yes, so we are credentialed. I am credentialed.
As am I.
What took place at the Boise Capitol is wrong.
Really made me mad because 5 minutes before, 20 minutes before, that cop was like shaking hands with my son, acting like everything's fine, and then they're storming down there and grabbing you out, and they ran over some other little kids, and doing that for what?
I didn't realize that Bailey had gotten knocked over as the ISP had come back up the aisle carrying Brian with extreme force, in my opinion. He wasn't resisting arrest.
was almost immediate. Before there even was hardly any conversation, the officers started coming, but it wasn't just the 8. It was like the 15, 20 officers that were in the hallway waiting in back room.
One of the really big officers that was coming toward me, he basically just grabbed a hold of my whole body with the left side of his body, and he just pushed me as hard as he could. If I had a chance to speak to the officer that assaulted me in the Lincoln Auditorium of the State House during the special session, the first thing I would say to him is, do you have a wife?
To me, it was very obvious that it was, intentional to cause trouble so that the Idaho State Police can come in there and teach the people a lesson and reassert their authority.
If that officer could think about what was done to a woman because she went over and stood in front of him to try to make a statement that she didn't think that what was happening was okay, and that was somebody's wife, even if he's not married, maybe that would make him think twice about what he did.
And this is supposed to be my pre-trial. I was given a summons.
I still don't get it. I'd like the state of Idaho to dismiss it, but I'm not going to plead guilty because moms and parties with their kids are not guilty.
An Ada County judge issued a bench warrant this morning after Bundy did not show up for the beginning of his trial.
Even a jury that the prosecutor picked completely, and we didn't even have any say in it, I am confident that they would acquit us on all charges. But the problem is they won't let us in.
Here in the Treasure Valley, Ammon Bundy is out of jail. Earlier this week, he was arrested for failure to appear after refusing to wear a mask inside the courthouse.
Did you guys report on the arrests out in front of the courthouse?
Was it the Ammon Bundy thing?
Yeah.
I believe we did.
Do you remember if they actually reported all the details?
Channel 2?
Yeah.
I'd have to double check at the article to see.
These are the rules that the commissioners give the judge when it comes to this building. This is what the judge has to have in order for him to have jurisdiction, because he has to have the commissioner's permission. No entity or group or individual should be allowed to obstruct the steps and entrances of the Ada County Courthouse and administration building for any purpose to impede the ability of the public, employees, and staff to freely and safely enter and exit the building.
Amen.
That's the laws that is on the judge from the commissioners, and they're violating it. Article 1, Section 18. Justice to be freely and speedily administered. Courts of justice shall be open to every person, and a speedy remedy afforded to every injury of a person, property, or character. These courts, by definition, by the Constitution, and by the law, are supposed to be open. We don't have to ask for permission to not have a mask.
No,
we don't. They never had authority.
I understand. But we're already so far past common sense that they won't allow people in without masks. I mean, we're already so far anything that resembles common sense.
You need to file a complaint.
You go in and tell
I can file a complaint.
You need to file a complaint.
But that's not going to change what's going to happen in the next couple minutes.
He did not fail to appear. You wouldn't let him in.
We're not going to argue. You have a warrant, $10,000 warrant.
You're breaking God's law.
You're going to come in?
To check and balance the judicial.
That's exactly
That's
right.
exactly right. That's why you take an oath.
And you
to
know
stand against a judge. You know
this
that
is
is
unlawful.
true. This is unlawful. I've come to appear. Aaron has come to appear.
I'm trying to
Sacred Father in heaven, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here together to allow the state of Idaho and the citizens of this country to see the atrocities that are happening at this place, at this location, at the courthouse. We're grateful for the miracles that you've allowed to happen to open the eyes of those people of Idaho to get us to this point. Pray that you're with us today. I pray that you soften the hearts of those individuals that desire wrongs for the people of Idaho. I pray that you hear our voices and hear the cries of those that have been affected and afflicted from the wrongs that have occurred here and through the governor's office and through the Capitol building. I pray that you'll watch over these people, watch over us, allow us to enter this court and have a fair trial.
Yes, Lord.
Pray that you see that our intentions are obviously just. Pray that you see our pleadings, Lord, and I pray that you see all those crying voices that have had to suffer from all this, and that they be recognized and the service in the sacred name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Hallelujah.
You like the cooler? You like the cooler in there, boy? You want a blanket? You want a blanket? Do you want a blanket? You want the heater on? Nothing happens until, that's right, till you put on the mask. It's warm on the other side. They've got blankets. They've got food. All you have to do is give in. It's all you gotta do. You wanna see the judge? Ain't nothing happening until you comply. Just put on the mask. Just put on the mask. Do you wanna get out of here? You got someone special out there? You got someone special out there waiting on you that maybe wants to hear from you? Do you want to make a phone call? Would you like to call that special someone to let them know that you're okay? Nothing happens until you put on the mask. Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Who are you trying to impress? You want to make a phone call? You want to see the judge? None of it's going to happen until you do what I say. And that's put on the mask. You comply and nothing happens. You want to use the phone? All you got to do is put on the mask. Just put on the mask. You want to see the judge? Put on the mask. We're going to come in here every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes we're going to come in here. Make sure you don't get any rest. What are you? Some type of constitutionalist? All you gotta do is put on the mask. All you gotta do is comply. Just comply. And this all goes away. This all goes away.
Well, we'd gone to the Ada County Courthouse, which is across the street here, to just support Aaron and Eamon for their court hearing that day. And they were supposed to be having a jury trial for their arrest that happened in August at the Capitol for trespassing, and because they were ordered to leave a public meeting because the chairman didn't want them there, and they refused to leave because it was a public meeting. They had a right to be there, so the chairman called the officers and had them arrested and hauled out for trespassing, and when they weren't doing anything but just sitting there listening to the meeting. And then anyway, we were here to support them, and there was we got here about 9:30, and there's court date was scheduled. The time was scheduled for 8:30, and when we got here, they were standing outside with a bunch of officers around them, and that wouldn't let them in the building. We asked what was going on, and they says, "Well, we can't. They're not allowed in the building without a mask on." So we just went and visited with other people that were here. There's about 100 people here that had showed up. Many of us had been subpoenaed to testify on their behalf. And about 11, the judge told them he was issuing a warrant for their arrest for failure to appear. And so a lot of us that were outside got a little upset because they didn't fail to appear. They weren't allowed to appear. They were restrained from appearing because they wouldn't wear a mask. So anyway...
but Scott Johnson was the one that told
yeah, Scott Johnson came out, the undersheriff came out and told him he wanted to bring him inside, away from the crowd, so he could arrest him and book him and whatever to Ammon and Aaron. And when they took him inside, some of the group tried to go in with him, which I wasn't involved in, but I was probably 10-15 feet away observing, and it started a little ruckus, but they finally got him inside and got the doors closed and had him on the floor arresting him. And then Scott Johnson came back out and raised his hand and motioned like this to have the other officers that were on the other side of the patio area to come over. There was about 10 or 12 of them over there, and they just got in a ball and started plowing their way through the crowd, pushing and shoving and stomping and kicking and just brutalizing people on their way through. And we got swept up in the midst of that.
And you were just protecting your wife and your space. I was as they were advancing towards us, and I looked over to my left, and a friend of ours, Jen, was in. She was screaming, "Let me go! Let me go! You're hurting my neck! You're hurting my neck!" And I looked over there, and the officer had his right arm around her chin and in the crook of his elbow, bent over his right thigh as he was dragging her through the crowd. And for what reason, I don't know. And then at that time, I was impacted by the mob of officers, or men in sheriff deputy costumes is what I call them, because they weren't acting like police officers. They were acting like a mob. Got that right.
And they come plowing through, and that's when I was impacted by them, so distracting me back to where I was. And I was just attempting to maintain my position because we were just peacefully assembled there to support Ammon and Aaron in their trial. And as I was impacted, the officer in front, come to find out his name was Mulkey, and he impacted me, but the mob was kind of pushing him from behind. And anyway, we kind of interacted a little bit, and I was trying to keep my balance, and I have Parkinson's for 23 years, so my balance isn't too good sometimes. And when they impacted me, we kind of scuffled a little bit. I was trying to block him with my forearms, and then he grabbed my forearms and got me off balance, and I got pushed back into my wife.
I think I've pinpointed the moments that caused them to give us citations. With Casey, it looked like Officer Hale. He's the larger officer with a lot of gel in his hair.
Yeah, I believe that was Sergeant Hale, actually.
Oh,
if I remember correctly.
He's the one who gave me a citation.
Oh, okay.
But it looks like, I don't know if he shoved him on purpose or if he got shoved too, but it looked like Officer Hale was behind Casey, and Casey kind of, you can see something push on his back, and so he's like cocked forward like this. If you're charging someone, you don't go like that.
Right.
But when that happened to him, his right shoulder impacted another officer in the center of his chest, and that seemed to set off that officer. And when Officer Mulkey saw that, he immediately ran over and seized upon Casey. First they like shoved him back, and then they pulled him in, and that's when Officer Mulkey pulled him all the way in through the door and slammed him on the ground. And then they dragged him several feet in there and arrested him.
Wow.
And so I was kind of near Casey, and you can. I've got it in slow motion where I look over and I see that they grabbed Casey. So I tried to get myself forward towards Casey to, try to stop them just from attacking my friends. But they were able to shove me back, so I wasn't able to really get very far.
Yeah, so ultimately I've been arrested twice now fighting mask mandates. So both arrests have stemmed from fighting the misdemeanor, I guess you would say, crime that they wanted to attach to wearing a mask. So they wanted to be able to cite you with a misdemeanor for not wearing a mask. And so I fought that at Central District Health, and then I fought that at Diana Lachiondo's house. And so the first one was one of the large Central District Health protests, and that was on December 4th. And I wasn't arrested at that point in time, but they have arrested me for that protest. In addition to that, they have arrested me for the protest at Diana Lachiondo's, which occurred on December 8th. So I have 2 arrests stemming from issues coming out of Central District Health, the regional health districts, that stem from them wanting to mandate and force a misdemeanor upon us, and mine and other people's fight back against that and pushing back against that. So all First Amendment issues, all in light of exercising our rights and protesting their infringement upon our rights. And so both arrests occurred at the Capitol as I was going to either participate in government or fight particular legislation that I also thought was unconstitutional. And, so they have chosen to attempt to exclude me from certain processes, as, yourself and other individuals have been excluded from the legislative process. And then they have decided to attach charges to either keep us out of that process or distract us or silence us or, whatever the issue is. But to attempt to make us feel the weight of the oppression, that the state wants to press down upon us.
The injustices are just piling on top of each other. I can't comply with madness. I can't comply with tyranny and nonsense. And the thing is that when you first look at when we first saw the COVID stuff coming out a year ago, a lot of it seemed to not make sense to me, And here we are a year later, and I feel 100% confirmed that that is correct. The COVID stuff didn't make sense. The restrictions didn't make sense. We now know that the computer modeling that the original restrictions were based on, that computer modeling was completely flawed or false or whatever you want to call it. And yet we've gone forward with this madness that our government won't stop. So we don't have a balance of 3 branches of government right now. We were pushed out of government on every single level, which is completely a crime. And that's why I did what I did, which was a lot of protesting that got me arrested. And so now here we are at the court, and we don't have due process.
I'm here for court, which I'm being denied entry because I cannot wear a mask. I'll freak out. I'm claustrophobic, but either way, justice being denied. I've been charged with 3 different charges. First one is trespassing. That's what this court day is for. Trespassing at CDH during a public hearing. Then, since they didn't want to allow me there, then it's disturbing the peace at one of the commissioner's houses, which we thought she was broadcasting from there. And then failure to appear, because although I did their Zoom thing last time, the judge didn't like it, so he charged me with failure to appear anyways. So it's possible I'll be arrested today, but I won't hide. So I'm here, and I'm glad to see a bunch of people showing up, and I hope, show up for everybody who's being denied due process. If every time they deny due process, they expect a crowd like this, maybe they'll stop denying it.
Had an interesting day. I been arrested twice today, and I'm either completely stupid and crazy, or we have a huge problem, because I know that it's not just Idaho. I know that it's all over, and I don't want to, drag this on too long, but basically, many of you know in August I went to a special legislative session at the Capitol building in Idaho, where the governor was trying to make himself immune from the COVID decisions and all the terrible things he's done to Idaho. The governor's received, we know, of $8.1 billion. He put the state of Idaho under Marshal Law, under Code 46601, which basically says that all the government of Idaho is under the governor. And then he did exactly what the federal government wanted him to do, and he's received $8.1 billion, and he has made his own proclamation saying that he gets to spend that money at his pleasure. And if you don't believe me, go to his Order 2020-07, Governor Little of State of Idaho, Order 2020-07, where he says that he's putting together this committee that serve at the pleasure of the governor, and the governor's office is going to spend all the coronavirus funds that they received from the federal government, which is $8.1 billion that we know of. He suspended the rest of the Idaho government, the legislatures, and he's basically running amok here in Idaho. And so in August, this was months ago, this was 8+ months ago, he tried to pass a bill that would make himself immune from any of his COVID decisions, and we went, and the governor and the Speaker of the House targeted me, and originally thought it was the pro temp as well in the Senate, but we've kind of realized with all the discovery and all the letters and emails and facts and stuff that we've got through discovery, we now know that it was the Speaker of the House and the governor. And they targeted me and had me arrested in August twice and trespassed me from the Capitol building. They did that so that I wouldn't, influence the legislatures to end the emergency orders and the martial law that the governor has put the state of Idaho in, so that he can continue to receive billions of dollars and have the government under his control. And that's what this is all about. So, then I began to fight my case. Many of you know they denied us trial for months and months and months, clear from August 2020 to March 15th of 2021. They wouldn't give us a trial because they said that jury trials have been suspended in Idaho. Imagine that. Jury trials have been suspended in Idaho. Then, because we kept pushing and insisting that we get a trial, finally, 7 months later, they give us, actually more than that, but yeah, I know about 7 months later, they give us a trial date on March 15th, and we go to show up at the trial, and they arrest us for not coming in without a mask. We were down there, they wouldn't let us in, and they give a warrant for failure to appear for me and myself and Aaron, one other guy who's going through this with me. So we go to the courthouse, we try to get in, they will not let us in, they block us from coming in, and then they file a warrant for our arrest for failure to appear to our own trial. So anyway, that happened. We also been, fighting and litigating, and we found that there was a bunch of corruption in what happened when they arrested me, of course. And we found clearly that the director of administration didn't have authority. He was acting basically as a pawn for the governor. But he didn't have authority to trespass us in the Senate gallery. So, make a long story short, we exposed that, uncovered it, we filed a motion, and we had that charge dismissed. So now I only had one charge, one trespassing charge. Well, so then today, I had a meeting over there by the Capitol building, and I thought, well, now that trespassing charge has been dismissed, and that was the only written authority that they claimed, and also we knew that Bedke, the House Speaker of the House, didn't have authority. So I'm going to go into the Capitol building and I'm going to find out what authority they have, and I'm going to test it. So I went in there, and ultimately the ISP surrounded me, and I asked them, by what authority are you doing this? And they couldn't answer me. They wouldn't answer me. And they put handcuffs on me and arrested me, drug me out of the Capitol building, took me down to Ada County. The entire time I'm asking, you need to show me authority. You don't have proper authority. You need to show me the authority in which you are trespassing me for. And they wouldn't and couldn't. So then I sat in the cop car at the jail in the little Sallyport area. I sat in there quite a while, and I could tell that they were doing something, going back and forth. And then on their computer in the front seat, I noticed that the director of administration, which is Keith Reynolds, I noticed that the letter that he trespassed us with showed up or popped up on the screen. And then so then when they came, I asked them, well, what authority? And they said, the authority under the director of administration. That's what we're arresting you for. Well, that case had been dismissed. That is the very case that didn't dismiss because of, they didn't have authority in the first place, and the court the prosecutors had to recognize that, and they dismissed the case. And so he's telling me that he's getting authority to arrest me now. This is what the ISP officers, they're getting authority to arrest me now because of a case that's been dismissed. And so, I was like, wait a minute, that isn't right. So they booked me and did all the things, and I bailed out, got a ride, went right back to the Capitol building, and sat there. I went up on the Senate side and sat in the Senate, right by the Senate entrances, just sat there. And here comes Idaho State Police Blake Higley, who is the governor's personal security sergeant. And he comes over there, and he basically says, round two, huh? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm just wanting to know what authority you have to trespass me on. And he says he couldn't give it to me. And then he went over and he started talking on the phone for a little while. And I'm just sitting there. And then he comes back over, and I said, so did you find out what authority you're trying to trespass me on? Because he said, at this point, he said I was detained. And he says, I don't need authority. That's what he says. I don't have to have authority, I think were his exact words. I don't have to have authority. So you're just going to trespass me, put me in handcuffs, drag me out of the Capitol building during a session. During a session and during normal business hours, that was fully open, you're going to drag me out of the Capitol building again in handcuffs for the second time in one day, and you never had authority and you couldn't quote authority. So then I said, well, does a person have a right to protest in the Capitol building? And he says, yeah. I said, so why are you arresting me? And then he says, well, we're arresting you for trespassing. And I said, well, by whose authority? Because it's very clear in Idaho law that you have to have the proper authority from either the Speaker of the House, the pro temp for the Senate, or the administration, depending on where you're at in the Capitol building. And so I'm asking, what authority? And he couldn't answer me. He wouldn't answer me.